Coming up this week, breaking through glass ceilings with uncomfortable conversations. Target. Numbers are falling down. We know they had, some people who decided to protest after they removed their DEI policies. Plus, Donald Trump, how bad slavery was. And Laila Ali finally, gives us a little bit of tease on whether or not she'll face Claressa Shields. All that and more. Breaking through glass ceilings with uncomfortable conversations. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Uncomfortable Conversations. I'm your host, Brian H. Waters. This show, of course, is brought to you by Six Heart Media Productions. Folks, a couple things that's happening over the past couple of weeks right here on Six H Productions. First, me and Queen PR, we've got our new podcast, Loving Them Gates. So the first episode, we did a deep dive on one of the relationships on this show. Actually, I should say a love triangle between Danny Dupree, Bill Hamilton, and Haley Hamilton. If you watch Beyond the Gates, you know what we're talking about. And then we also did a power rankings for last week. So make sure you check those out. And then also make sure you check out my interview with author Jamar Mills, good friend of mine, fellow Baltimore City College graduate, fellow Morgan State grad. We talked about his graphic novel Pinpoint. So you want to check that out. I'll be having some more material about that coming soon. Now, as far as some uncomfortable conversations, as we know, Target has received a lot of backlash. It's, the retailer that, a lot of times people go to for, household items, electronics, school supplies, you name it. I am, kind of a frequent Target shopper due to the fact proximity and, the pricing. But recently they revealed that they were removing their DEI, diversity and inclusion policies. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of times things happen and we see a little backlash on social media, but then we'll see action. And recently, it's been reported that their stock has plummeted, down like 20-something% in the past few months. And they, of course, when you look at like all the text and the literature behind this, they've been saying stuff such as they're blaming other retailers such as Amazon and Walmart, then they're blaming tariffs. Now, here's the thing. Amazon and Walmart have been around for over a decade. People still went to Target. A lot of times people went there because the way the merchandise, the way it looks clean, the customer service. Target, when I worked at Best Buy for well over 4.5 years. And, we obviously Target and Walmart were competitors. The thing we used to say about Walmart was you stack them high and let them fly. Meaning they pack in all the TVs, they set it up, and then boom, people just go in and buy it. Target, it was make sure the store looks nice. And, that would make people feel comfortable shopping there. Now, the reason why they would tell us this, because at Best Buy, we had to give people an experience. When they came in, we had to greet them, we had to talk to them, and we had to find out exactly what was their needs. As somebody who worked in the television department, or they call home theater, I had to say, so what are you using the TV for? Obviously using to watch it. What do you watch primarily? Well, if you say action movies, I had to sell you on this kind of TV. If you said sports, I had to sell you on that kind of TV. Then I had to say, did you need an HDMI cable? Did you need this? Did you need that? That's what we had to do at Best Buy. Target was always about how good it looked, how pretty the store looked. But now, after those policies, because that's what it all traces back to. I'm not buying what the CEO is selling and the new CEO that's going to come in and talk about, getting back to the merchandising. No, it's when you came out blatantly said that, you were rolling back your DEI policies. So people have finally, put their money where their mouth is. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Target these next few weeks. But all I got to say is this, honestly, well done. You see a lot of these backlashes on social media. You see a lot of people screaming loud, and you never see action. We saw action. Speaking of action that we may not want to see, Donald Trump is now trying to get rid of some of these museums and Smithsonian museums and get rid of some of the things that's in there, including, as he wrote on Truth Social, they're just focusing on how bad slavery was and all this other stuff. And he just keep talking about the woke left. And one of the things that I kept reading was that he wants these museums to the White House said the museums should reflect on Donald Trump's interpretation of American history. Now, we all know, Make America Great Again. When was America great? We've always had that conversation, right? So him trying to do this is obviously, as always, a slap in the face. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's asinine. He just doesn't want to admit that it wasn't a great place for everyone. And we should focus on that. The Smithsonian is supposed to be mutual. So trying to do this, it's one of those things that really just makes me say, how much longer do we have? We knew it was going to be a long 4 years, but golly, it's other big issues going in. You see him deploying the National Guard, and Governor Wes Moore, the Maryland governor, reminded everybody on CNN that he is the chief and commander of the state of Maryland. He reminded everybody that Maryland's crime rates have lowered, including from in Baltimore, where I live, and Brandon Scott leading that charge. So when I see Donald Trump trying to, flex his muscle and everything, it's almost like you're just waiting on that big bombshell to drop where he just comes out and admits to what everybody thinks of him anyway. On that note, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into some sports. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support this podcast by wearing a t-shirt, whether it's the one that says Breaking Through Glass Ceilings or the one that says No Ceilings Above Success, simply go to foryourwear.com. Also, you can support some of your other favorite podcasts and content creators, including Those Wrestling Girls, Seahawk, and the Wrestling Club. And you can support some of your favorite independent wrestlers, including Jay Bougie, Trisha Dora, Chaz the Don. Shoot, all the Pure Ignorance is on there. So go on foryourwear.com, go under personalities, you'll find Brian H. Waters, and buy a t-shirt. And remember, I'll give you a shout out on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, are you in the gym every week? Are you looking to kind of keep yourself cool while you work up a nasty sweat? Well, I got the best thing for you. Cooling bands, bandanas, cooling towels, and so much more. Go to Vertical Athletics, get your favorite team in MLS or MLB, or guess what? Now they have a custom option so you can upload your own logo, and you can save 10% at checkout when you enter the code Brian H. Waters. Go to vertical.com, use the code Brian H. Waters to save 10% on some of your best cooling gear. And I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk the NFL. Dillion Gabriel. I will say this. I am not the most knowledgeable when it comes to college football. I try to watch it. I'm a front runner. I will know who the big names are. So Dillion Gabriel is not somebody who's on my radar, but his teammate, Shedeur Sanders, was. Now, Dillion Sanders being one of my top 10 favorite players of all time, of course I'm aware of who he is, and I rooted for Colorado, and I continue to root for Colorado. Well, there's a quarterback battle happening in Cleveland now. We all know Joe Flacco, former Ravens Super Bowl MVP quarterback, has been named the starting quarterback for the team. But Dillion Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, they're all battling for that number 2 position. Well, Shedeur Sanders came out the first game. He had an incredible game, scored a couple touchdowns. Dillion Gabriel, he had an incredible game. And he says, there's some there's some entertainers. I'm a competitor. Now, as soon as this quote happens, like Saturday when it was happening, I was working on other stuff. I was probably watching BMF. I see this quote. I said, uh-oh. I see he takes a shot at Shedeur Sanders. We all know Shedeur does the whole thing with the watch and everything, right? So when I saw this, I said, oh boy, let's do it. That's what's going to happen. You expect they're competing for the starting job. That's the difference of millions of dollars. So that's a part of the game. But by the time he got to the podium, he said, you guys are entertainers. I'm a competitor. Talking about the media. And I know a lot of people was like upset about it. And the first thing I thought is, the public relations team got to him, hey, fix that. They didn't want those battles and that to be the narrative. So it's better for him to have the narrative of him taking a shot at the media than his own teammate. I'm not buying it. I will say this. Yes, media people, we are entertainers. That's how we get ratings and clicks. Duh. Now, we are also competitors, Dillion Gabriel, because we're competing for those ratings and clicks. But as far as him saying he's talking to the media, as far as with that quote, I am not buying it. And apparently they say he said that before. And even people are saying, like, nobody paid that much attention to Dillion Gabriel. But I just don't buy it. But, we're going to see. We're going to see how this season plays out. We'll see if we're watching him. I can tell you this, or simulating through preseason, playing John Madden 26. Dillion Gabriel isn't the starting quarterback. It's Shedeur Sanders, actually. And Joe Flacco is a free agent. I'm playing with the Ravens. I actually might sign him just for backup purposes. Who knows? Sticking with sports, right? There's talk about a MLB realignment. Now, this is the possible. Apparently, they're going to add 2 more teams, and they're talking Charlotte, Nashville, Portland, Salt Lake City. One of those teams, right? That would put us at 32 teams. And with the 32 teams, the commissioner said this could be by 2030. We could do a realignment. As a baseball enthusiast and traditionalist, there are some things I don't mind moving forward. I don't mind the pitch clock. But there are certain things I just want to be left alone. I'm still trying to get bought in on this designated hitter thing, right? I used to love when the National League had no DH and the American League had it. It distinguished things. So then when you saw a National League game, you saw the pitchers going up the bat. And I love the fact that you had some pitchers who hit home runs at any given time. So with that being said, there's also talk about this where maybe get rid of the American and National League. That hurt my soul. But the more I think about it, I'm not that upset by it. Here's why. They've taken away what I just mentioned, the designated hitter rule being exclusive to the American League. They've taken that away. And then they've also given us interleague play throughout the whole season. Everybody's playing everybody. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. That was the difference between baseball, because you had to watch the All-Star game to see Ken Griffey Jr. taking on Greg Maddux, or you had to hope that these two teams would get to the World Series. baseball was the first sport that I really like fell in love with and started to follow. Then football and basketball fell along, right? So when I saw that the NFL had an AFC and an NFC, I was like, okay, what's the difference, right? Not really much of a difference. Same game, same rules. So in basketball, it's the East and Western Conference. But I remember being confused, like, but everybody still play each other. So that was the thing. So I'm not really a fan of interleague play, but if we're going to do this, then I agree. Get rid of the American National League, make it East and West. Now, the biggest thing that's concerning people is that you would have the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, and the Philadelphia Phillies all in the same division. I think you have to make some adjustments because that was one of the proposed realignments. And I think with the Orioles, it was going to be the Orioles, Nationals, Reds, and Pirates. Or maybe it was the Guardians or something. I think you do have to make some because you still have to preserve some of these division rivalries and you have to preserve, you got to have a balance, right? Because that first division I just mentioned, those are teams that you expect to compete each and every year. So you imagine if with this, I'm assuming there's no wild card because if you got 8 divisions, you might as well just have only the division winners go to the playoffs. If you do it that way, man, you mean to tell me there's no there's a potential playoffs with only one of either being the Yankees or Red Sox, Mets or Phillies in there? I don't know. So that's going to be interesting. And we'll see how this plays out. But it's definitely something I'm looking forward to pay attention to. Moving on, another uncomfortable conversation. Male cheerleaders. Everybody's in an uproar. Oh, because there are male cheerleaders. Why is this news? There have always been male cheerleaders. I don't understand. Why are people upset? You know, people don't respect the cheerleaders the way they should. Now, I know that the world is being more open than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, more accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, right? And I feel like if they want to be a cheerleader, let them. What you going to say? All right, I accept your sexuality, but you can only do certain jobs. And at the end of the day, it's not bothering you. But there have always been male cheerleaders. There have always been straight guys who are cheerleaders. You know, you see them do the flips and stuff. So the Minnesota Vikings got a lot of backlash. People were screaming, and it's always people just being upset over stuff that just has nothing to do with them. Before I was set to record, Queen PR sent me a link. I talked about Laila Ali and Claressa Shields several weeks ago. Well, Laila Ali has come out and said that the world will know soon on her answer, $15 million. Now, the thing I loved about her conversation was it wasn't just about the fight. Obviously, she said she has a lot of stuff going on. So if she does take this fight, she's going to have to prepare for it. So that's what she has to think about. She is a mother. She's a wife. It's a lot of stuff that she got to think about. A lot of stuff she's going to have to table so she can train and focus. But the thing I love was how she reminded everybody how much of a glass ceiling breaker she is. And this is an opportunity, $15 million, where she can bring in that type of money and open the door for other women. Let's be real, no offense to Claressa Shields, but she's no Laila Ali as far as brand recognition, and she can't do that. I don't know if there's a woman who's a boxer right now who can. You know, we're talking what Laila Ali is doing is what Ronda Rousey was doing 10 years ago. Opening doors and shattering glass ceilings. Opening the pathway. That's what her legacy would be. So, will Laila Ali do this? We don't know. I was very against her fighting because I want her record to stay pristine and clean. But we should put it that way. I guess. We'll see. We shall see. Now, before I get out of here, right? upon me traveling, and before I did this show, there was a lot of discussion about David Justice. So I thought about this and I said, I've been listening. I listened to the full conversation he had with Matt Barnes. I listened to everything. And everybody heard the clip where he talked about, and the quote card, if they didn't listen to the clip, about how Halle Berry didn't cook, didn't clean. But I'm going to play a little bit. I'm going to chop it up and play the parts that you probably didn't hear when it came to this conversation.
We spent a lot of time apart because she was doing movies in this country, that country. We probably could have made it if I knew about therapy. If we knew about therapy, we probably could have made it because we never had any major issues like that.
So the context, as always, people, y'all like to say media, people like to take out is, what's the part that's going to go viral? Let's paint David Justice in the bad light. Let's put it out there. He said she don't cook, she don't clean. And then even Halle Berry posted a clip of mother, wife, etc. And I was like, when I listened to the interview, I thought it was commendable that he admitted where he went wrong. His understanding at that time. Now, obviously, he's happily married. She's happily married. They don't go on about their way. But I just couldn't understand, why is this happening, right? Why people clearly don't listen to full conversations. And then another thing about that conversation was where everybody brought up, was like, don't forget he abused her. And he brought it up. He said, she said a former boyfriend hit her in the head. He was her husband. And, unfortunately, like David Justice says, she never dispelled it. She never said, hey, that's not what happened. And it just goes to show you how things can be taken out of context. So just be careful out there. But ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode. Make sure you check out all the content I mentioned earlier. Make sure you subscribe right here for all your news, trending topics, for career resources, in-depth interviews, and of course, Beyond the Gates content. Until the next time, folks, remember, do not let anyone place a ceiling above your success.